We've got breaking news out of the NFL. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow will miss the rest of the season with a torn ligament in his wrist. Now, he was hurt during the second quarter of last night's loss to the Baltimore Ravens. It's been an injury-riddled year for Burrow, who's missed most of training camp with a strained calf. Jake Browning, who finished last night's game against Cincinnati, is expected to remain under center in the coming weeks. He went 68 yards, a touchdown, and no picks in Burrow's absence. Let's get out now to Cincinnati and hear from Bengals head coach Zack Taylor.
Tough loss yesterday, and the biggest news will be with Joe Burrow. You know, he had an acute injury yesterday, likely on the play before his last one, where he tore a ligament in his wrist that will likely require surgery and require him to be out for the rest of the season. So we're still gathering more information on that, but that seems to be where it's headed right now. So that's the news, and you know, just talking to guys on the team, excited to rally around Jake, and we got a lot of great players on this team, and so excited to see this team really band together for these last 7 weeks and find a way, you know, and so we're excited for that opportunity, but obviously disappointed for Joe.
How did y'all come to the conclusion that it was on that play before?
That's the best guess. You know, you just see how he landed. Clowney kind of lands on top of him, and the way that he caught his wrist, you know, for him to throw the way he did before that, and then the next play not be able to really grab the ball, that seems to make the most sense.
So is it a certain part of the hand?
Wrist.
Did you even see it in the moment? You just call the next play like normal?
Yeah, no, didn't, you know. I can't answer.
From Bengals head coach Zack Taylor, and for more on this, we welcome in our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Jonathan, obviously a blow to this Bengals team, especially when you think about the playoff picture. We'll get to that in a minute, but your thoughts on Joe Burrow and him missing the rest of the season?
Well, that was the fear after last night, right? I mean, we saw what happened, not just the hit from Clowney, and then you saw a very sort of wobbly pass, not a lot of oomph behind it on the touchdown throw to Joe Mixon, but really on the sideline as Joe Burrow tried to warm back up, to try to test out that arm and that wrist, and he just couldn't grip the football. And in that moment, that's when you knew, okay, this is very likely not going to be good news. They scheduled the MRI, and then that revealed, of course, today the torn ligament. So incredibly unfortunate for Joe Burrow, who just cannot find himself to be injury-free, just can't have a clean season, right? It was the ACL a couple of years ago, and then you know, he had the stomach issue in the preseason last year, and then he has, of course, the calf strain this year that plagued him throughout training camp and into the season, and now this, of course, that is going to likely, as Zack Taylor said, require surgery for him to return to full health and be 100% for the 2024 season. So a gut punch, of course, to the Cincinnati Bengals, to their fan base, to everyone there, but also NFL fans at large, because it wasn't but a week or two ago that he was facing the San Francisco 49ers and looking like an MVP candidate. And so playing football at an incredibly high level as one of the two best quarterbacks in the NFL now, of course, missing the rest of the season for the Bengals as we see right there in the hunt for the playoffs, trying to make yet another run in the AFC.
I want to ask you about some of those injuries, JJ. When it comes to Joe Burrow, he just became the highest paid player in the NFL at the beginning of the season. Is there concern from the team that Joe Burrow maybe isn't durable, or have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I think that you had the calf strain that happened and took place at the beginning of training camp. Again, unfortunate. We saw a lot of soft tissue injuries that took place every training camp, especially in the first week of it. So that was not unusual. The fact that you tear a ligament when Jadeveon Clowney who's having a hell of a year, winds up sort of landing on you. Again, not entirely surprising. And so no questions or issues about Joe Burrow's durability. In fact, I'll tell you this, there were a lot of folks around that team who thought that he could land on injured reserve earlier in the season due to re-aggravating that calf strain at the start of the season. And the fact that he was able to gut it out and beat the Los Angeles Rams in his next game back and not have to take any time off and get better throughout the week really kind of showed and proved his toughness. So no questions about his durability, just an unfortunate series of injuries for one of the NFL's best quarterbacks.
We saw the images circling around of Joe Burrow arriving in Baltimore with that wrist on the same hand. Was there any connection in that to the injury that he later was diagnosed with?
So Zack Taylor is saying absolutely not. He is saying that this is completely unrelated. I can tell you that the NFL is investigating why or why not Joe Burrow was not on the injury report for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, you see right there, it's some sort of compression, some sort of wrist splint. It's hard to tell exactly what it is, but very clearly something around the wrist. And it's not for fashion. One would think that it is something that bothers the quarterback. And in today's NFL, really in even yesterday's NFL, but certainly in today's NFL with the proliferation of sports gambling, that having a quarterback, a signal caller, someone who touches the football every offensive play, that having an injury or a perceived injury and it not being on an injury report, especially on a short week, that's something that the NFL is certainly going to look into and is looking into right now. Again, the Bengals say it is unrelated. They say that it is completely and wholly confined to that play that Jadeveon Clowney hit. Again, is when the Bengals are saying that it took place. But this is very common in the NFL. When you get some information a little later, it is routine for the league to look into it. So that investigation will include talking to coaches, the player himself, certainly the training staff, and really, even if the league finds out that something was amiss, that he should have been on the injury report, we're talking about really a fine to the team, not a loss of draft pick or anything like that. So that would be, I believe, the maximum punishment. But just because he has torn a ligament, his season is over. That will not stop the league from investigating this to its conclusion.
Let's talk about the AFC playoff picture, because the AFC North this year has above and beyond been one of the best divisions in the NFL. Now you have your starting quarterback missing the rest of the season. Jake Browning last night, 8 of 14, 68 yards and a touchdown. I'm just curious, do you think this is the guy going forward when you look at that playoff picture, or how does this injury now affect how the Bengals look at the postseason?
Well, it's going to have to be the guy for this upcoming week and probably beyond. You know, Jake Browning, this was his first real action this season in the NFL, coming out of college a few years ago, following the 2018 season. Undrafted free agent, signed with the Minnesota Vikings, has been on the Bengals practice squad up and down. And so he competed in training camp with Trevor Siemian, wound up winning that backup job. But the Bengals, you know, they weren't loving what they got from him earlier on in the season. They wind up bringing in A.J. McCarron, a veteran, having to sort of brush up on some terminology, get him hip to the lingo that they use there, if you will. I won't at all be surprised to see the Bengals add a third quarterback out there, maybe a Reed Sinnett, someone who was with the team back in training camp and I think earlier in the season as well on the practice squad. You know, Brandon Allen is over there with the San Francisco 49ers, the former backup for Joe Burrow, and the Bengals, of course, we're after the trade deadline right now. And so you can't trade for anyone. You have to go out. If you're going to add someone, it has to be a free agent right now. We know that the Browns worked out Joe Flacco. We know that the Rams signed Carson Wentz. If you bring in a quarterback right now who is unfamiliar with your system, which is really what they have left after Reed Sinnett, it's going to take weeks for that quarterback really and truly to get up to speed, maybe 2 or 3. So at least for right now, it's going to be Jake Browning. Zack Taylor talked earlier about how he liked his calm and his poise, how they didn't have to scale the menu of plays down for Jake Browning during that game, that they were able to call what they needed. And obviously this happened on a Thursday night. It was a short week for the Bengals. If there is any good news moving forward, that means that it is now a long week for the Bengals to get things in place for life after Joe Burrow this week and beyond. And of course, when you look at the division, you have a Ravens team that obviously has outpaced you, but you have a Steelers team that gets outgained by everybody that they play, but still they muck up the game enough to win. You have a Cleveland Browns team that has their quarterback, running back, left tackle, right tackle, all on injured reserve, and they're going to be starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson this upcoming week. And so as you look around who you have to outpace for an AFC wildcard spot, there is some hope for the Bengals, but certainly they're going to need Jake Browning to play up to even greater potential for that to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a test, and his first test comes on the 26th against the Steelers.